Hey everyone, Brandon here with GallowayPrecision. Today we're going to go over the installation of our SDVE Reduced Power Spring Kit. The idea of this kit is to reduce the trigger pull weight in your SDVE and get rid of that gritty hard wall feel of it. So your kit's going to come with a striker, a blocker spring, the trigger return spring, and your sear spring. This being the key to really reducing the trigger pull is with the sear spring. Alright, so let's go over tools you're going to need. You're going to need your bench block. You're going to need a pair of needle nose pliers. You're going to need your 1/16 pin punch, a 1/8 inch pin punch, your brass and polymer hammer, or like this, a combination hammer, and a straight pick. Alright, so let's lock and clear the weapon and we'll go ahead and start disassembling. So as you can see, we are visually and physically empty. Let's go ahead and take the slide off, and that's what we're going to start with. All right, we're going to take our, and by the way, this is the new production SDVE guide rod. We've gone with a nylon backing, but also it makes it much easier to take apart to swap out spring rates. All right, so we're going to set that off to the side and our barrel off to the side. We're going to get started with our straight pick. Alright, now if you look right here between the blocker and this open space, you can see the blocker sleeve, or correction, striker sleeve. Not blocker. This is a striker. If this were your blocker, that ain't never going to work. Alright, so go ahead and take your straight pick, push it up under the striker, and compress down like that. And your back plate's going to slide right off. Now keep your thumb over it so when you remove your pick, the striker doesn't just go flying out. Alright, so we're going to take our striker out, set it off to the side. We're going to go ahead and remove our extractor, the roll pin and the extractor, so we can get to the blocker with the blocker spring underneath it. Alright, so we're going to flip to the flat side of our bench block, take our 1/16 pin punch, drive from the inside out. Now, if you do it just right, you don't have to remove the pin completely. You can just get it enough to where the extractor is going to move. All right, take and face down the slide, because when you move the extractor out of the way, the blocker is going to fly out because it's under spring tension. So if you take the extractor off while you got it up this way, it's going to shoot out up at you. All right. Now, if you've watched any of our videos, you know what I'm a stickler for. Separate your parts and keep your stock parts in case you ever need to send your pistol back for warranty work. Any firearms manufacturer, I don't care who they are, with the exception of Glock with Ghost Ink trigger bars, will take all aftermarket parts out of your gun if you send it in for warranty work and will not return it. Alright, so they'll return your gun, they won't return the parts. Let me clarify that. So we're going to take our new blocker spring out. We're going to move the old blocker spring, put it in our bag, set it off to the side, take our new one, go ahead and get it in there. Now the blockers on these have a little divot inside. It's hard to see, but the spring locks in and you'll feel it lock in place. Alright, so make sure you put it in there and just give it a good twist so it locks in. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the blocker now. Take our extractor. If you remove the extractor the way I showed you, you're not going to have to go hunting this spring, but if it does fall out, this is what the extractor spring looks like. Alright, it's going to go right back in its little hole. Notice the cutout on the extractor right here where it wraps around the blocker. So you're going to hold that down, hold it in place, so it's going to hold the blocker. Just take your polymer hammer, start driving it enough to where it's level like that. Then we're going to take our 1/8 inch punch and drive it flush. The reason we use the 1/8 instead of the 1/16 for driving it flush is, you can see, it's going to stop. You might, if you use your 1/16, you might over push the pin through, and if you can actually get the pin to come out almost to where it's even with the rail or a little past it, and the extractor will hold in place, but when you put it together, it'll lock the pistol up. Alright, so let's go ahead and put our barrel and our guide rod back in, because now we're going to do the striker, and then we'll reassemble. And the reason I went ahead and put the barrel and the striker in is instead of using the bench block, we're going to use the slide, and the barrel being in it, except my bench isn't very level, helps it hold up. The weight helps it stand up. So what you're going to do is flip your barrel up like this. You're going to take your striker and put it in. All right, notice how it goes right in. Well, we don't want it like that. You're going to turn it off to the side so the back of the striker rests on metal. And then you're going to compress your spring so you can remove your spring cups and slowly ride the spring up. All right, so we'll set it down like that and take our new striker spring out of the bag. All right, set our old striker spring inside of it. I'll stand it back up. I'm going to put on our new striker spring and compress and reapply our spring cups. All right. This is the trickiest part, and that's why it's also, I like to use the slide, because it doesn't have the ability to move around a whole lot, whereas when you use a bench block, you know, it's the same thing, but you got a little bit more movement, and it's very close to the bench. And if you're doing this at home, it's a lot harder to be bending over and looking than it is to just use the slide itself to where it's almost chest level, so it's much easier. You don't have to bend as far to look. All right, so our striker's back together. Let's go ahead and insert it. And push down on the striker sleeve. All right, and you can do it with your finger. If you got big fingers, just take your 1/8 inch, push it down until you get the back plate on, like so, and then just push it home. And you'll hear it click in place. That's the striker sleeve. Now, don't pull your striker to the rear and just let it slam forward. But I do like to move it, make sure it's working correctly, and give it a push, make sure it's not working past the blocker. Go ahead and depress the blocker and push the striker. It should go forward. And that lets us know all the springs are installed correctly and nothing's all kinked up. All right, so we're done with the slide. We're going to set it off to the side. All right, now we're going to go to work on the frame. All right, the first pin we're going to drive out is going to be the fire control unit pin. You take your 1/8 inch punch and just drive that on out. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. All right, the SDVE has this trigger pin that holds in the locking block, the trigger, and the slide lock. The reason it does that it stays in place the way it does is because the slide lock's got a spring on it, and on this side of the pin there's a cutout that locks into that spring. All right, see how that goes? So now what you're going to do is we're going to drive from left to right. Shouldn't take much more than that. All right, so as you're pushing it through by hand now, you got to make sure that you take your straight pick and move the trigger spring out of the way, because it will lock into that divot. Once you got that out of the way, you can go ahead and finish driving it out. All right, just like that. Oh, everything's going to come flying out. All right, see our divot right there, and we're going to drive in from the left to right, and we'll show you how to do that. All right, so you can see there's your slide lock and its spring. Set that off to the side. Go ahead and pull the trigger out with the trigger bar. Set that down. We're going to pull the fire control unit out. Now, some of you, it may stick if you've got a fairly new gun, maybe tight and hard to get out. Just basically grab the extractor and pull straight up. All right, set the frame off to the side. We're going to start with the hardest part first, which is doing the sear spring. Okay, now the fire control unit's fairly basic, fairly simple, as you can see. All right, and that's your sear. So you pull the trigger bar pushes this, it drops out of the way, striker goes forward. All right, so we're going to take our 1/16 punch. You see this one silver pin. Go ahead and push that out. All right, now we're going to take our 1/8 inch and push from the bottom of the fire control unit I apologize for all the sniffing. I think I'm starting to get a cold. We're going to pull our sear and sear spring up. Now here's what's very important when we go to put this. So we've got our fire control unit out, and as I was saying, the most important part to notice is how this spring is orientated. All right, your little arm here is going to go to the rear. That sticks out to the left like so, and the straight arm is going to go forward. Now, it looks like it should go this way. It does not. All right, so we're going to take our sear spring, take our new one out. All right, put our old one in the bag. Now, we're going to orientate our sear and our spring. And here comes the super fun part, trying to get this all back in. Now, there's a couple different ways to do it. Easiest way is what I'm going to show you. I like to lay it on its side. And even the easiest way is kind of a pain in the butt. All right. Lay it on its side, get it inserted, and at least started. Now the spring's going to want to move around on you. The biggest thing is you got to make sure that that arm stays right where it's at. All right. And take your pin punch, push the whole thing home. All right. Now you can see the spring's not wanting to go all the way down in there. So the other thing you can do is take your straight pick. You got to push it in from behind this ear till you get it to pop like that. You got everything lined up. Our left arm, or correction, the right cut out, the right angle sitting on the right side. We're going to take our pin and push it on back through. Okay. And push on the sear, make sure it's moving correctly and it springs back. All right, so it's good to go. The other way you can do that is try and hold everything with your needle nose like so and push it all in. Once you get the spring in, you can take your needle nose, grab here, and push down, and it should line everything up. But usually it's much easier to come from behind with your 1/8 inch, which fits, and just shove it down, get it lined up, put the pin back through. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and put our fire control unit back in to the slide, or the frame, set it off to the side. Now we're going to change our trigger return spring. Now, this is also important how it's orientated. All right, so this is how it comes out of the gun. With the closed end of the spring up in the trigger, the open end is to the back, but you need to make sure that the open end is facing up and not down. If it's facing down, it can actually pop off the trigger bar and won't lock up the gun. You'll just have a dead trigger. All right, so we take our new spring out, take our old spring, put it in the bag. We now have all our old springs in their respective bags off to the side. All right, so now I'm going to hook our trigger return spring just like it was when it came out. And take our trigger. You want to hook the trigger bar right here on this arm as you're installing. All right, push that down on in there. Let it rest just like that, okay? We're going to put our locking block in, and the reason we're doing the locking block first will become apparent here in a second. Now, take your slide lock and put it in underneath while you're holding the locking block in place. Because if you try and install this with the slide lock and the trigger and all that at one time, it's kind of hard to keep it in place. And what you don't want to happen is where the slide lock spring can pop up in front of the locking block right here where it bevels, because you can see right there in the locking block the cutout for that spring rest right there. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put that in. Take our slide lock, stick it in, make sure it's lined up. All right, so that doesn't pop back out on us. All right, so that's in there. So now what we want to do is you look through and you can see slide lock moving around. So let's get our pin started. Remember, we're starting from left side of the frame to the right. It's going to hold the locking block in so that we can adjust move around the, ooh, don't push it too hard because it'll go all the way through. But we can move around the slide lock like I just did and get the pin going. You can see the pin now. All right. So pull that back to the edge. Line up the trigger. Get it into the trigger. Now we're going to take our straight pick. We're going to hold the spring up so that it starts to, the pin can lock up on it. Then you come up underneath your block, straighten out your pin, or the spring. This is probably outside of the sear the trickiest part. Another way to do it is you can come through the right side of the frame, get the spring lined up this way with your pick, and start pushing the pin through. All right. But mainly you just want to make sure that you get that spring worked over the pin so that you can just push it home. You don't have to hit it, you can push it, and you'll hear it lock in place. It's locking on the slide lock spring. So before we put our slide on and function test, we're going to check our slide lock, push it up, it should spring straight back down. All right, pull the trigger. Sear should be moving where the trigger bar is actuating the sear, and the trigger return spring should be pulling it back forward, like so. All right, so looks like we've got everything installed correctly. Let's go ahead and put the slide on and do a function test. So the first thing you're going to do is rack the slide without depressing the safety on the trigger. Pull the trigger. All right, doesn't fall. Go ahead and pull the trigger, let it fall, rack, and then slowly release. You hear your reset click, pull, striker falls. So we are good to go, and that is the reduced power spring kit installation for the SDVE. Makes a huge difference in this pistol. All right, you don't have that hard pull and then the wall and all of a sudden break. Now you have, oh, good thing I caught this. I have a bad tendency to do this. We forgot to put a part back in. That's why I'm going to leave it in the video. Always check your bench. We've got to put the fire control unit roll pin back in. All right, get it lined up, just knock it on home. Start it with the brass, knock it home with the polymer. Just make sure it's equidistant on both sides so it's not sticking out. And you're good to go. So see, even the professionals make mistakes. All right, anyhow, makes a huge difference in the pull. It's no longer gritty and then hard until it finally breaks and then it just dumps. It's just a smooth, clean pull straight to the rear. All right, same distance of reset, same distance of travel, just a much smoother, lighter pull, which is all going to vary depending upon the tolerances of your particular pistol. But usually you'll see anywhere from 1 to 1.5 pound drop in the pull weight, which makes a world of difference in this gun. Which, for the money, this is a great pistol. Definitely a good car gun, but do keep in mind, guys, that the whole SD stands for self-defense. The service life on these pistols is about 4,000 rounds, and then it needs to be completely rebuilt from the ground up, and they usually replace the frame. So do keep that in mind when you're shooting these, that these are not meant to be 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 round range guns. This is specifically for personal defense. All right, so that's it. That's going to wrap it up on this video. If you got any questions, feel free to email me at tech, that's Tango Echo Charlie Hotel, at GallowayPrecision.com. Be sure to follow us on social media here on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe below. Be sure to follow our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. Instagram and Facebook page have really taken off, and I've got all of you out there to thank for it, and I greatly appreciate it. Instagram is probably the best page to go to see pictures. Try to post every day unless we're absolutely swamped. But be sure to go by the Facebook page or our website and sign up for our newsletter. I send out a newsletter once a month unless there is an absolute new sale or brand new product people have been looking for. So you're only going to see 1 to 2 emails from me a month. but if you subscribe to the newsletter, you are the first to know what the monthly sale items are going to be before I post about it on social media. So that's a big incentive to sign up for the newsletter, because you're going to know about it 2 or 3 days before everybody else does. Alright, so recap: reduced power spring kit. You're going to see a good change in your SDVE. Be sure to follow us on social media and sign up for the newsletter. And as always, be safe, be accurate, and God bless.